Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're doing a deep dive on how to actually read a book.
Okay.
Not just, the words on the page, but really getting something out of it.
Right.
So we're taking on Mortimer J. Adler's classic, How to Read a Book. Now, this one has been around, since like 1940?
Yeah, it was first published in 1940, revised in the 70s.
1970s, okay.
And it's still relevant today
Oh, yeah, for sure.
because it gives you a framework to really understand what you're reading,
Yeah.
not just absorb information.
Which is something I struggle with, honestly. Like, I get to the end of a chapter and I'm like, wait, what did I just read?
I think we all do.
Yeah.
And that's what's so interesting about this book. It addresses the problem that we're just inundated with information these days.
Right, right.
But having a lot of facts doesn't mean you understand them
It's true.
or even know what to do with them.
Yeah, like I can tell you all the, capitals of countries,
Okay.
but does that actually mean I understand, like, geopolitics? No.
No, and that's where How to Read a Book gets really interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
It compares reading to being like an athlete.
Really?
Yeah, specifically a baseball catcher.
Oh, okay.
You can't just stand there with your mitt open. You have to be
No.
ready to move, anticipate the pitch.
So it's active.
Exactly, active reading. You're engaging with the ideas.
So I'm not just like, passively letting the words wash over me.
Right. And Adler breaks down reading
Yeah.
into these 4 levels. Elementary reading, that's like, the basic.
Well learned in school.
Then inspectional reading.
Inspectional, like I'm inspecting the book,
Sort of. It's about quickly figuring out
what the book's about.
if the book is worth a deep dive. So they're skimming to get the main idea
Okay.
and what he calls superficial reading.
So like reading the whole thing, but quickly.
Yeah, without getting stuck on the details.
I like that. It's like checking out a movie trailer before you commit, 2 hours of your life.
And it saves you so much time because let's be honest, there are a lot of books out there.
Too many.
But he also talks about speed reading.
Oh, interesting.
And his point is, speed isn't everything. Sometimes you need to slow down.
To really absorb it all.
Exactly.
So how do we know when to, speed up or slow down?
That's where the value of the book comes in. If it's something light, sure, skim it.
The good stuff.
If it's something that could change your understanding, well, that's where analytical reading comes in.
Analytical reading. Okay, I'm intrigued. That's for like the real deal books, right?
The ones you really want to understand.
So not my beach reads.
Maybe not, unless you really want to analyze those too. But with analytical reading, it's about asking questions as you go.
Oh, like engaging with the material.
Exactly. What's the author's main point? How are they supporting it? Do you agree?
So it's like having a conversation with the author, even if they're, long gone.
Right. You're bringing your own thoughts to the table.
Okay, but sometimes I get lost, Like, what questions am I supposed to be asking?
Well, Adler gives us a set of rules, 12 to be exact.
12. Okay, maybe we don't have time to go through all of them.
We don't, but some key ones are finding the book's unity.
Unity.
Like, what is the one thing the book is about? And then identifying the key terms.
Okay, yeah, because sometimes a word can mean something different in one book versus another.
Exactly. And finally, he talks about coming to terms with the author.
Coming to terms.
Like, what are their main points, their propositions, and do you understand their arguments?
Gotcha. So I'm not just passively reading, I'm actively figuring out what the author's trying to say.
Right. And whether you agree with them or not.
But all this sounds like a lot of work. Like, reading should be enjoyable, right?
Of course. And Adler acknowledges some books are harder than others.
Right.
But he encourages us to, not shy away from those challenging books.
Okay, because sometimes
That's how we grew.
the hard stuff is the good stuff.
It can be. Like, think of it as taking on that advanced hiking trail.
Oh, I see.
Sure, you'll need to stop and catch your breath.
Yeah.
But the view from the top, that's where the reward is.
And you feel so accomplished afterwards.
Exactly. And remember, Adler's not saying you should only read difficult books.
Right, right.
There's a place for everything.
Like my beach reads.
Exactly. But those challenging books, those are the ones that can really change how you see the world.
I like that. So it's like, I can have my cake and eat it too.
Exactly. A little bit of everything.
A balanced reading diet.
There you go.
Okay, so we've talked about active reading, the different levels, and embracing the challenge. Where do we go from here?
Well, let's dive into some of Adler's specific techniques for getting the most out of any book. And don't worry, we'll make sure to keep those beach reads in mind too.
Perfect, because I have a whole stack waiting for me.
We'll get to those. But first, let's talk about the power of note-taking.
Okay, so note-taking, huh? I have to admit, I'm terrible at it. I either get so caught up in writing everything down
Oh, yeah.
that I lose track of, what I'm actually reading,
Yeah.
or I just don't bother at all because it feels so disruptive.
Right. Well, Adler actually suggests keeping a notepad handy for exactly that reason.
Really?
So you don't have to interrupt your flow. Like if you have a thought,
Okay.
just jot it down quickly and then keep
So
going.
it's like a little mental pit stop.
Exactly. And then you can come back to it later.
I like that. But what about highlighting? I used to think that was like, defacing a book.
I know, right? It felt like sacrilege.
Yeah. But now, I don't know, I kind of see the appeal.
Well, Adler actually encourages marking up a book
He does.
as a way to have a conversation with the author.
So it's not just about like highlighting the pretty sentences.
No, it's about engaging with the text,
Yeah.
making it your own.
Okay, but I still feel a little hesitant. Like, where do I even start?
He suggests focusing on key sentences that sum up a point, definitions,
Okay.
things that really stand out to you.
So it's like creating a roadmap for myself.
Exactly. You're highlighting what's important to you.
I can get behind that. But sometimes I just want to read for fun, like escape into a story.
Of course. And Adler talks about different kinds of truth, like factual truth in, a science book.
Right, right.
But then there's poetic truth in novels and plays.
So it's like I wouldn't judge a painting just on how accurately it depicts a landscape.
Right. It's about the overall effect, the emotions it evokes.
Exactly. So when I'm reading fiction, I can just let myself get lost in the story.
Exactly. Immerse yourself in that world.
Okay, I can do that. But what about when I'm reading something like history? Like, how do I know what's, actually true?
Well, Adler reminds us that history is always told from a perspective.
It's true.
So you have to consider the author's biases, their sources.
It's like those he said, she said situations, You have to get both sides of the story.
Exactly. Read critically, ask questions, look for evidence.
Gotcha. Okay, but science. That's a genre I struggle with. All that jargon.
It can be daunting. But Adler says even if you don't have a science background,
Okay.
you can still understand the main ideas.
But what about all the, equations and technical stuff?
He suggests focusing on the problem the author is trying to solve.
Okay.
Pay attention to definitions, maybe skip the super technical parts on the first read.
So get the big picture first.
Exactly. And then you can always go back if you want to delve deeper.
Okay, that's reassuring.
Yeah.
But honestly, sometimes I hit a wall with philosophy.
Oh, philosophy can be tough.
It feels so abstract and dense,
Adler actually compares reading philosophy to having a conversation
Oh, interesting.
with someone much wiser than yourself.
Okay.
So approach it with humility.
Humility,
You might not get everything on the first try.
but keep trying.
And remember, not all philosophers write the same way.
Right, right.
Some are more straightforward, some more poetic.
So it's like different genres of music. You wouldn't listen to, Bach the same way you listen to jazz.
You have to adjust your approach.
Gotcha. Okay, so what about those books that are considered, canonical? They're really important ones.
The classics.
Yeah. Like, they seem so intimidating.
They can be. But Adler says those books often carry a weight of authority.
Like, they're the rule book.
Sort of. So you have to understand the context.
The time period, the author's background.
All of that. And even then, remember, there's still room for interpretation.
So even with the classics, I can still think critically.
Absolutely. Your own thoughts and interpretations are still valid.
Okay, that's good to know. But what about social science? It seems like that field is just exploding these days.
It is, and it's often a mix of different disciplines.
Right, which can make it even more confusing.
It's like a recipe with ingredients from 5 different cuisines.
Exactly. So how do I even approach that?
Well, Adler says first, figure out what disciplines are at play.
Okay, so is it mainly sociology, psychology, what?
Exactly. And then pay attention to the author's assumptions, their biases.
So their perspective on the issue.
Right, because social science often deals with, sensitive topics.
So I can't just take everything at face value.
Right. Be skeptical, look for evidence, and don't be afraid to challenge the author's conclusions.
But how do I even understand those complex arguments and theories?
Adler says focus on the author's theoretical framework, like their underlying assumptions.
Okay, so it's like two people looking at the same stars but seeing different constellations.
Exactly. And don't shy away from statistics.
Oh no, numbers are not my friend.
You don't have to be a math whiz. Just focus on the key findings.
Okay.
And look for explanations of the methods used.
So I'm not just blindly accepting numbers.
Right. Be a critical consumer of information.
Gotcha. But social science is always changing, right? Like, what's true today might not be true tomorrow.
That's true. New data emerges, theories evolve. It's a constantly developing field.
It's like navigating by the stars. You have to adjust your course as you go.
And speaking of adjusting our course, all of this leads us back to syntopical reading, the most challenging level.
Right, where we're reading multiple books on the same topic.
It's like building a mosaic, using different pieces to create a bigger picture.
A more complete picture.
Exactly. And Adler gives us a step-by-step guide.
Okay, I'm listening.
It starts with finding the right books for your specific question.
So I'm like an investigator gathering evidence.
Precisely. And then comes the hard part, bringing the authors to terms.
Bringing them to terms.
Finding a common language, bridging their different perspectives.
It's like being a translator.
It is. You're figuring out how to express the same idea in different dialects.
That sounds incredibly challenging.
It is. It takes careful analysis, but the payoff is worth it.
Okay, what's the payoff?
Once you bring the authors to terms, you can compare and contrast their ideas.
So it's like setting up a debate in my head.
Exactly. You see where they agree, where they disagree, and it helps you form your own conclusions.
So it's not about finding the right answer. It's about creating my own understanding.
That's it. You're taking ownership of the ideas, weaving them together.
To my own unique tapestry of knowledge.
I like that. And while syntopical reading is great for complex topics, it can be applied to anything.
So like I could use it to, research my next vacation destination.
Absolutely. Or to learn a new skill. Anything that interests you.
So it's not just about reading a bunch of books. It's about becoming a better learner.
Exactly. It's about constantly seeking knowledge and challenging your own assumptions.
I like that. But sometimes the hardest part is just finding the time to read.
I hear you. Life gets in the way.
Yeah, life definitely gets in the way, like between work and, family stuff.
It's a lot to juggle.
Yeah. So how do we make reading more of, like, a regular thing?
Well, Adler really emphasizes that reading isn't just something you do, for fun.
Yeah.
It's essential for growth, like intellectual and personal development.
So it's important.
Yeah. It's like exercise. You got to make it a habit, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Okay, so I need to create a reading ritual. But sometimes even choosing what to read feels overwhelming.
I get that. There are so many options.
Yeah, like where do I even begin?
Well, the book actually has a great suggestion.
Okay.
Start with what interests you.
So like not just the classics that I think I should read.
Right, exactly. Don't force yourself to read something you're not into.
Because then it feels like a chore.
Yeah. Pick something that genuinely sparks your curiosity.
Okay, but how do I find those books?
Well, think about the topics that fascinate you, the questions that keep you up at night,
Okay.
or even revisit some books you loved as a kid. See them with fresh eyes.
That's a good idea. And there's always the book's own recommended reading list, right?
There is, although I know it can be a little intimidating.
Yeah, like Plato and Shakespeare. I mean, do I need a PhD to understand those?
No, not at all. Adler emphasizes anyone can engage with these works, even if they seem challenging.
Okay. Yeah.
As long as you have the right mindset and the techniques we've been talking about.
The act of reading stuff?
Exactly. It's not about being a literary expert. It's about being engaged.
I like that. So it's like reading is a personal journey, not a competition.
There you go. Read what you enjoy at your own pace.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it.
Like join a book club or something.
Exactly. Or discuss what you're reading with friends.
It's like having a personal trainer, but for your mind.
I like that analogy. But ultimately, I think the biggest takeaway from how to read a book is that reading is an adventure, a lifelong one.
It's not just about, absorbing information.
Right. It's about expanding your horizons, understanding the world, connecting with great minds.
And to think all this wisdom is packed into a book about reading.
It's like meta, right?
Totally. So we hope this deep dive has given you some new tools and inspiration for your own reading adventures.
Definitely.
Remember, it's not about speed or quantity. It's about depth, engagement, and the joy of learning.
And the joy of a good book.
Absolutely. So go forth and read, everyone.
Happy reading.